For the 9th week in a row, millions of Americans filed for unemployment. The numbers are staggering. Another 2.4 million Americans looking for jobless claims last week. That means nearly 39 million Americans are out of work right now. On top of that, new Census Bureau numbers show that 47.5% of all adults live in a household that has lost some income during this pandemic. NBC News senior business correspondent Stephanie Ruhle joins me now. Steph, 2.4 million Americans out of work last week. Where are the losses coming from? Tell us a little bit more about the people behind these numbers.
Well, listen, it's not a surprise. Remember, even though we're slowly reopening, across the board, the majority of the country, many businesses are closed or at the very least altered. So it comes as no surprise. We're seeing it in retail, in health. We're seeing it in hospitality, travel. That comes as absolutely no surprise. Now, on the other side, however, because we're getting closer to reopening, I'm not saying we're going to have this booming comeback, but you bet your bottom dollar, as soon as things reopen, we are going to see rehiring happen. And we're starting to see bits of it now.
Steph, meanwhile, the stock market's been doing okay. The Dow only closed down about 100 today, and it's well over 24,000. But we know the markets, the economy are not at all the same thing. What's going on here?
We need to always remember that, right? Think about what the stock market is. When we talk about the stock market, we're not even talking about all the publicly traded companies. What we're talking about are the indexes, the S&P, the Dow. And what's in those? The biggest behemoth companies. And in fact, within, you are weighted by how large you are. So think Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google. Those biggest companies comprise 30% of the S&P. Now think about the travel and leisure companies. Their market cap are $10 to $20 billion. Those big companies like Microsoft, like Apple, they're $1 trillion. So those massive companies make up a huge portion of the index. That's how we look at the market. And those businesses aren't just surviving, they're thriving. The numbers we saw in earnings this week from Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, massive. Johnson & Johnson's CEO has said they're built for times like this. So yes, we know we've got now 40 million people that do not have jobs. We know every day there are small businesses at risk of closing. But the market and the economy cannot be compared.
Steph, I know if you're one of those folks who filed for jobless claims last week, it was a really rough week. But a small bright spot we are seeing, the numbers have been dropping for 7 straight weeks. And as states start to reopen their economies, hopefully those declines will continue. But looking ahead, is it unreasonable for us to expect that all of those jobs will come back?
All of those jobs are not going to come back, at least not in this speed. I mean, even Fed Chair Jay Powell said, don't expect to see a full recovery until 2021. There are lots of jobs that are going to come back, but they're also going to shift. You know, right now, all those big box retailers that I mentioned, they're all hiring massively, hundreds of thousands of people. We know that there still is demand. Remember, there are lots of perfectly healthy businesses that were forced to shut down 2 months ago. So they are going to reopen. They're going to have different needs. They probably aren't going to need as many employees as they once did. But the key to the economy is also consumer spending. That is always what's driven the U.S. economy. And while it's unfortunate that so many people are on unemployment, with these enhanced unemployment benefits, we are seeing people still spending.
Yeah, a lot of folks saying some of those unemployment benefits make it so that it doesn't make sense for them to go back to work just yet. Steph Ruhle, thanks so much for being with us. Always great to have you.
Thank you.
And keep watching News Now for more from Steph Ruhle. She's hosting a 1-hour special on the economic recovery in the U.S. That is tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on NBC News Now. A major tourist attraction in Tennessee reopening for the first time since the start of the pandemic. Graceland, the iconic home of Elvis Presley, welcoming visitors again with some new restrictions in place. NBC News Now correspondent Dasha Burns joining me now from outside the house in Memphis. And Dasha, what will visitors see when they visit Graceland now? What changes have they had to make?
Yeah, it's a pretty different world here, Allison. First, before anyone can even set foot on these grounds, and that's employees and visitors, they need to head down the road here and get their temperature checked. If you have a temperature above 100.4, you cannot enter. Once you get your temperature checked, you get on these shuttle buses here. There's actually one coming over now. I don't know if anyone's actually on it. You get on those, a maximum 10 people per shuttle bus, and then you get dropped off right here. And you can see on the ground here these blue markers. These markers are those social distancing markers to keep that 6 feet between groups, between people. And I actually learned today that Elvis was exactly 6 feet tall. So if you just imagine Elvis lying down on the ground, that is the distance you need to keep from people. Masks are suggested for guests, strongly suggested. We've seen most people here have been wearing masks, and it required for employees. But Allison, the biggest difference, take a listen, look around. It's pretty obvious. It is very quiet here. There are no crowds. Typically on a day like this leading into the holiday weekend, you would see 2,000 to 3,000 people come through here. There have maybe been a couple of hundred. We did see a little more traffic earlier today, but that's really, it's pretty striking to see a massive tourist destination like this open, but pretty darn quiet.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Dasha, if you had seen any folks really there today. I know you mentioned you weren't sure if there was going to be anyone on the shuttle bus at all. What are folks there telling you? Are they expecting people to come back?
And confirmed there is no one on that shuttle bus. But we did meet some people here today. I actually was surprised. People from kind of all over the place. I met someone from California, from Florida, from St. Louis. A lot of people on road trips, Allison, and they're just trying to find a way to kill the time during this period. I did meet a man dressed as Elvis, though, who was from Memphis, and he decided he just needed to get out of his home and try to entertain himself a little bit. But it has been an interesting time for guests and for employees. I spoke to one of the archivists here about sort of this weird, interesting moment that this historic property is in right now. Take a listen to what she said.
It was so odd closing during the pandemic, because besides when the president and the prime minister of Japan came through tour several years ago, Graceland had not been closed. You know, it was since 1982, and to be closed for 2 months was kind of surreal. But being able to welcome people back in our new environment, what we're starting to call our new normal around here, and being able to have people enjoy Graceland and have that kind of outlet after being pinned up for almost 2 months at home.
And Allison, the people I did meet today were very excited to be out, to be seeing something, to be entertained. And frankly, they were kind of enjoying this quiet time here. They can walk into the mansion. They can take their time. They don't have to elbow anyone to get to see the coolest stuff, go at their own pace and really get up close and personal with this iconic spot.
Yeah, Dasha, we've been saying that, you know, as things start to open, whether it's the museums in Europe, Disney in Shanghai, I mean, the one thing is that's nice for folks, if you're going to go, at least you don't have to wait on lines or bang into people to see the main attraction. So definitely an upside there.
Exactly. You got all the space you could need.
Yeah, it won't be hard to keep an Elvis distance apart. Dasha, I know more broadly as Tennessee is continuing to lift its restrictions. What's next there in the next phase of reopening that state?
Right, so the next phase starts tomorrow, actually, and it involves lifting some of those capacity restrictions at restaurants and retail stores. Of course, they will still have to adhere and enforce those social distancing guidelines, but also those larger non-contact venues are opening up. That means water parks, zoos, museums, concert venues, again, with strongly suggested safety protocols, but they're starting to open up, and we're seeing this across more and more places in this country, Allison.
Dasha Burns, I have always wanted to go. I've never been to Tennessee. I've always wanted to go, always wanted to see Memphis and Graceland. I can't wait to catch up with you and hear more about it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Allison.
Las Vegas is looking to get its once booming hospitality and tourism industry back up and running again. The convention center is now a massive testing facility for casino workers. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson is at the convention center. And Steve, tell us what it's like. What's going on there?
Allison, this is like a human conveyor belt, the likes of which we rarely see. There's a reason why they're using the Las Vegas Convention Center. And, you know, this is a place that houses things like the Consumer Electronics Show every year. It's that big because they expect thousands and tens of thousands of workers to come through here in order to properly get their jobs back. I mean, a lot of these casinos are calling these workers back. They need a place to test them on a massive scale. And so you have all these companies coming together to work in concert. You're talking about this is heading up by the University Medical Center, but it's MGM. This is Boyd Gaming. This is Caesars Entertainment. These are some of the biggest names that control some of the biggest properties on the Strip. And the reason why they wanted to come together is because it's the most efficient way to do it, right? They all have workers that need to come back to their jobs. They all figured out this is the best way to do it. And so they're going to be doing this over the next couple of weeks. If you want to talk about scale, I mean, you're talking about thousands of workers every single day to the tune the University Medical Center believes they can do 4,000 workers a day. And then when that's all said and done, you're talking about, you know, a tremendous amount of workers. It's incredible how they're able to do it as well. We watched in there. The social distancing is pretty immaculate. There are places on the floor where workers stand. They know exactly where to push them in. They know exactly how to take their temperature as they're going in. They're using thermal cameras to do that. And then when they finally get back to being tested, they're your normal, oral swabs. I believe they do a throat swab. It's a pretty quick, pretty efficient process. And then you're in and you're out. So it's a pretty incredible undertaking that's going on here, one in which we haven't really seen the scale of something like this. But that's because University Medical Center has been working with the community, working with the state. They know how to do stuff like this. We've seen this all over the state of Nevada, and this is no exception, Allison.
Steve, I know this is only the beginning. As these hotels plan to reopen, what else will they be doing to keep workers and visitors safe?
Well, you know, it's everything you might expect. It's the face mask on workers. It's social distancing, limiting the number of guests that come in the casino at first. Then it's, you know, things that are a little more, oh, this isn't like normal Vegas, which is, you know, you may go to a craps table and it's, you know, maybe one person on each side instead of all people crowding around the table. You go to a blackjack table and maybe there's plexiglass to help separate the worker from the people that are on the other side. You go to, one of the other tables, a card table, maybe it's a few chairs that are 6 feet apart instead of people that are right in a row all together. So that is a big part of it. And then you got to talk about the technology, too. Thermal imaging is one of the things that we keep seeing over and over and over again. And that's just the ability that when you walk in, you don't even know it's happening. It's this camera that can tell your temperature. And you can make the argument that, you know, it's people that are asymptomatic, but just having that baseline first layer of defense, you know, to know if somebody has a spiked temperature, that is something that is crucial to these casinos and properties, and especially to the peace of mind of the guests that are going to walk in there. We spoke to an executive vice president at MGM, right in the back of the Bellagio. He told us about some of the plans and the reason why they're doing this. Listen to what he said.
Testing is one part of a really multi-layered approach. Really, we have to have a whole plan. We have to be thinking about all aspects of health and safety. And it's hand washing, it's wearing masks, it's maintaining physical distancing, it's using technology to avoid congregating. It's all types of things, and probably most importantly, educating and training our employees so they know what to do when they're at work and also when they're away from work, because the nature of this crisis is that you don't know where you could contract it, so you really have to have your guard up at all times, be focused on the basics, and take care of yourself and those near you.
Bottom line, nobody wants to take any chances with this. This is about getting jobs to those workers back. This is in no way getting Vegas back to any sense of normalcy, because I think that is a long way off, especially if you were to walk in the casino shortly after this eventual opening happens. Allison.
Yes, Steve, speaking of when this eventual opening happens, do we have any sense of when hotels and casinos hope they'll be back up and running in some form again?
You know, that all depends on the governor and what the state decides. Right now, we're in phase one of reopening in Nevada. So that means some in-room dining in restaurants, nail salons, hair salons, things like that sporadically around the community. That does not include the casinos and resorts on the Vegas Strip. They are still waiting on when that decision will come down. We do know some new information that the governor is getting sort of a webinar teleconference tomorrow to the business community. Whether or not he'll include the fact that, there could be a reopening soon remains to be seen. Everybody, though, seems to think that there is a window that will be not Memorial Day, but maybe shortly after that, maybe early June. So that's when everybody's gearing up. That's when some casinos are even putting packages out to say, hey, we'll be open June 1st. So there's a lot going on, but all of it is predicated on what happens with the state and the governor, and everybody is waiting with bated breath for that. Allison.
Absolutely. Steve Patterson in Vegas, thank you so much.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.